Risotto. I love risotto. Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Megan and I post videos on here each week about stylish, sustainable living, including vegan recipe tutorials like you're gonna see tonight. If there was one dish that my husband would say I'm known for, I definitely think it would be risotto. I've probably cooked risotto, I don't even know, 1,000 times? Well, maybe that's a bit of an exaggeration, but a lot of times, and my family can vouch for it, that I can make it delicious regardless of whether it's vegan or not. Tonight we're making butternut squash risotto. Squash is one of my absolute favorite ingredients to use, and butternut squash is definitely the best one. All right, let's get cooking this awesome vegan butternut squash risotto. So in order to prep butternut squash, all you need to do is use a peeler and get all the skin off. And then you need to scoop out the kind of guts or the inside of the squash where the seeds and the little stringy parts are. Next, I'll cut up my squash just into kind of bite-sized cubes. I do like to puree about half of them after roasting for this recipe. So you can leave them in bigger chunks if you decide to puree all of them, but I like to keep about half for just some texture inside the risotto kind of pieces. Butternut squash has a ton of natural sugar in it, so when I roast it, I like to put it on top of a piece of baking paper so that it doesn't get the sugar all over my tray. And then I just put a little salt and a little olive oil on top of it, and then it is ready to go in the oven. You'll know the squash is done roasting when you can push a fork through them pretty easily, like you see here. It usually takes about 15 minutes, maybe 20, depending on how much moisture the squash has. So at the same time that you're roasting the butternut squash, you're going to want to roast some garlic. All you need to do is just cut the top off and make sure each of the individual cloves inside the garlic head have some breathing room, like you see here, so that they do have some exposure to the heat when you put them in the oven. Okay, so now I've got my garlic prepped like this, and then all you're going to do, put it inside some aluminum foil, top it with a little bit of olive oil, and put it inside the oven at the same temperature and time as the squash. So you know the risotto is done when it has this lovely brown kind of caramelization on it, and the pieces can be easily pulled out. So while my squash is roasting, I'm going to get the rest of my ingredients together. You can see here I have a dry white wine, a lemon, a homemade vegetable stock, risotto rice, which is also called arborio. This is fresh sage from my garden, vegan cream cheese, fresh rosemary also from my garden, and onions. I like to keep a few of the larger sage leaves off to the side because they make for a great topping. You can easily fry them in a little bit of vegan butter, and they are super good when they're a little bit crunchy. Once the squash is out of the oven, I make it into a lovely puree. In the puree, I put half of my butternut squash. I keep the other half to mix in with the risotto so you get some nice texture, as well as a little bit of stock just to loosen it up, and my packet of cream cheese. I like to make a puree of the butternut squash because it has a great creamy, velvety texture, especially with the cream cheese. Plus, it guarantees that you get a nice butternut squash flavor throughout the dish instead of just with bites where you have a piece of the butternut squash. Now that everything's prepped and ready to go, we are ready to cook the risotto. You're going to start by boiling together your stock and wine, as well as a little bit of pepper and salt. Boil those together for approximately 10 minutes until most of the alcohol burns off. You should smell it in the air as it's boiling. After approximately 10 minutes, I typically add in my onions, green herbs, and risotto all together. I put my onions straight in, raw. You could also saute them first and then pour the stock and wine in over the top if you prefer a little bit softer taste. Now comes the part of the process where you need to really keep an eye on your risotto and stir it regularly, approximately once every minute. Because that requires a lot of attention and standing next to the stove, I also typically make my toppings at this point. As I mentioned earlier in the video, I like fried sage as a topping, as well as some pine nuts. If this is all too much for you, feel free to make your toppings ahead of time and then just add them once the risotto is done. Don't forget to stir your risotto! Try a few pieces of risotto. They should be somewhat tender but a little bit crunchy still. At that point, then you should put in your butternut squash puree, as well as the chunks of garlic and chunks of butternut squash. Stir them all together and let the risotto cook for a few more minutes. This is also a great time to adjust the salt levels, add some lemon, pepper, or any other flavors that it needs. I prefer my risotto to be fully tender and soft, but some people like it al dente. Try a few pieces and see what texture you prefer. And that's about it. Add your toppings and serve alongside a nice glass of wine. Live up to the
hype?
To the hype?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah?
Come on.
It's like my quintessential recipe.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah.
You guys should try it.
This is a perfect dish for a date night at home or for entertaining some guests. Risotto so good, Sam's getting seconds.
Yeah.
I'm getting seconds too. No. No, we are both having seconds. He just beat me to the punch.
Yeah, that's right. First dibs.